I want to ask you, first of all, about the law of attraction and what we call secular law, the law of what we have in the United States. You have talked on and off about law and how it relates to certain things that people have been doing. And most often you talk in terms of litigation as it being something you would not advise people to do.
Only because it is usually pushing against something. It is perfectly wonderful to stand for something. There's a lot of patriotism that is surfacing in very powerful ways. And it's a wonderful thing when you stand in a place clear about what you stand for and feeling full of the pride of that direction of thought. But that is quite different from standing against something. You could use a word either way, and it can mean two entirely different vibrations. And we would say litigation is sort of the same thing. You could be really an advocate of something that you want, but you have to be very light-handed about pushing against what you don't want, because you can't stand for something and push against its opposite at the same time. And so what happens is one side or the other wins in terms of the secular legality, but in reality, everybody loses because everybody's pushed so hard against everybody that for the whole duration, they have used each other as their excuse to pinch off from source energy, and no real good ever comes for very long. And it isn't until it falls into their far and distant past that they begin to recover their life force again, you see. And it doesn't have to be that way. You could be in disagreement, meaning you are evaluating contrast, and out of the disagreement, you come to your full awareness of what you want, and if you could fully get aligned with what you want, thinking about it, speaking about it, feeling it, imagining it, breathing it, living it, knowing it, the universe is delivering it to you. You would have to receive what you are wanting. It cannot be any other way. It is conceivable that two adversaries could both, out of the conflict, define what they want, both cry out vibrationally and verbally to source energy, both get in alignment with what they want, and both receive fully what they want. There does not have to be a loser. Your court system says one will win and one will lose. The universe says you both can win. We are so good as source energy. We are so good as law of attraction. We can manage a way that everybody wins. Everybody wins in this vibrational universe. Everybody who will allow their personal winning.
Could we examine that in terms of two contexts? One is in terms of criminal law, because there we say there's a victim and then there's the criminal. How does the vibration there line up? I mean, do we have a victim? I mean, if we don't have a victim, then it means we don't have a criminal.
You have heard us and a lot of others say that there are not any victims in the sense that somebody could assert themselves into your experience without your vibrational compliance. But it will be a long time before your physical world would look at someone who has experienced death or injury by the hand of another and say that the one who offered it is not responsible for it. In other words, your world is really not ready to hear about there not being a victim. You can know it, however, and you could educate anyone that you were interacting with so that they didn't experience the backlash of now believing so much in the victim that they disallow the energy to flow because they have been called the victimizer. You want to talk about something specific, or shall we just keep talking in generalities here?
Well, you can be general. I've been thinking about scholarship in that direction, but what you just said is probably correct, is that the legal profession especially, and probably society at large, is not ready for it yet. But that's the big thing is, people get involved with small car accidents and you want to blame one side or the other side. And our system of justice is such that that's what they're supposed to do, is figure out who's wrong and who's right.
Here's the most important thing for anyone to understand about your system of justice. And we are neither for it or against it. We're just going to explain to you what we see about it vibrationally. Your system of justice is more about economics. It is a business, most of all. And so you said a very important thing here when you said, if there is no victim, then there is no crime. And we would take it a little bit further to say, if there is not a law, then there cannot be one who breaks the law. And if there is not one who breaks the law, then there is not need for the judicial system or for the jails. Jerry and Esther have been moving about in their monster bus for the last 2 years now. Rather than flying over the cities, they're driving through them. Driving through the countryside, driving through the nation. There is very little of the nation that they are not seeing in a very up-close perspective. And they've been surprised at how many prisons they are seeing scattered across the nation. It is not that long ago that there were not so many dotting your landscape. It has become a huge business. Now, think about it in terms of economics. If you had the business of jail, in other words, think about this hotel. This is a hotel that wants people to come and stay in it. A jail is the same thing. It wants people to come and stay in it. In other words, they don't build them hoping that they will stay empty. People who invest in them because they are wanting them to be full. And so if you had the power to fill them up by enacting laws, wouldn't it behoove you to enact a lot of laws? Wouldn't you say, now let's see, what kinds of things do people seem to really want to do? Let's make that illegal, and then we will fill up our jail. It is about economics, you see. And so when you understand that the judicial system is about economics, then you find your role in playing the game. You don't try to buck the current because it is a very big current. Economics is the current that keeps everything going. We are not at all pushing against your idea of economics because we know that every point of consciousness is selfishly motivated. In other words, there is no exception to that, and it's a very good thing, which means everyone who chooses everything chooses it because at some level of their being they anticipate that they would feel better in the process of it. So what that means is that as every point of consciousness is doing their best to do what they believe will benefit them most, then what happens is there is always an enormous, very extraordinary and very perfect balance to the whole of things. It keeps any one idea from dominating. It allows all to receive the benefit of what they are wanting. And so when you think in terms of the judiciary system and you think in terms of it sort of being orchestrated by this powerful economic balance and you recognize that everybody can find their place within it, then it's easier to sort it all out. Bring us back round to what you were talking about, and we will bring it back into the whole picture of this.
Well, I'm trying to find the connection, relationship between the law of attraction and our laws, and where they fit together, and how can we come to that resolution. And I'm gathering by what you're saying is that because of the economics, we're not there anywhere near in the immediate future. That's going to be quite some time that we can start to understand the law of attraction and therefore let things sort of sort themselves out, as opposed to having laws that were forced.
If you are wanting to offer a thought that would bring you and your society closer to what you're reaching for, imagine more people understanding law of attraction and understanding that there is no such thing as assertion, that everything is about attraction. Because it isn't until an individual understands that nothing comes to him that he is not inviting, that he loses his fear. And it isn't until you lose your fear of what others will do that you would then be willing to release your laws and trust that law of attraction is the manager that is sorting it all out. In other words, we talk here all day, every day, about the law of allowing. But we always say that it is not likely that you will reach the place where you will relax and allow all others to do as they choose until you have first understood law of attraction. Because until you understand that another cannot assert themselves into your experience, you might feel like you need to control the circumstances around, which feels to you then like you have to gather up all those that would do other than what you need to do. And it isn't until something falls of its economic weight that most of you make those kinds of changes. In other words, we believe that your judicial system, that your incarceration system will fall of its own economic weight. In other words, there will be a time when there will be so many that are in jail and so many that aren't in jail that are feeling the burden of housing them. In other words, talk about a hotel system. There are large parts of your population that are not productive, that are incarcerated, that all of their needs, medical expenses, meals, housing, all is being paid for by those who are not. And as the imbalance becomes too great, it is when it comes to that part of economic decision that we believe that more laws will be softened and more people will be released to their own experience. And of course there are always extremes. In other words, many would say, well, there are those that we want to lock up and there are those that we don't want to lock up. And we say, as long as there are those you want to lock up, you will always be in that vibration of pushing against. And as long as you are in the vibration of pushing against, there will always be those who appear to be victims, because that's how you become victims. That's how you get what you don't want. It is by pushing against what you don't want, you see. So that is a cycle that must be understood. Your world is coming closer to understanding that the war on drugs is not working. The harder you push against it, the bigger it gets. The war on anything doesn't make it go away. It just makes it get bigger, you see.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Here, then.